Hey everybody, my name is Steve. I run a home automation company called TechnoSpeak in the Los Angeles area, and today I want to talk about basic troubleshooting of your smart home system. Now, I know a lot of you guys are sick of paying a smart home company like TechnoSpeak or another one in your area for a service call for an issue that ends up being really simple and only takes the smart home tech maybe a couple of minutes to resolve. So what I'm here to do is talk to you about some basic troubleshooting tips that you can do on your own before you call for a smart home service call and potentially save yourself some money. So let's paint the scenario. So you've come home from work or from a run or wherever you're at, and you go to use your system using your universal remote or your phone or something else like that, and the system doesn't work as you expected. So first thing to look for is to make sure all of your IR emitters are connected to all of your devices. Now, an IR emitter looks like this. It's a little mouse that sits on top of all your components, especially components like DirecTV boxes, cable boxes, and stuff like that. And what it does is it actually sends commands to the actual device from the control system. So you want to make sure that these are connected nice and tight to each one of the components. And then the next thing you want to do is to make sure that somebody didn't disconnect these things, say oops, and try and put it back in the wrong spot. So a quick way to check that out is to get a little flashlight and to shine it on the front of the display right over where your emitter is, and make sure there's a little IR window around the IR emitter. That is where the particular component is receiving all of its commands. So that's a good thing to check. And if it's not quite in the right spot, you can move it over, maybe put a little tape on there, keep it in place, and save yourself the trouble of a service call. So the second thing to try is the power source. So under this, there's a few different things you can check. Number one, did one of your breakers trip? Your breakers are circuit breakers in your electrical panel. Sometimes if you've got a lot of gear, it's like a big stack of equipment or something else like that, you can trip a breaker. Especially if your home is fairly new, because you have arc fault breakers, and those are super sensitive, and they trip a lot when amps are connected to them. So go to your breaker box, it's either your sub panel, your main panel, and check all the breakers, make sure they lock in place, and if they feel a little squishy, like they aren't quite opening, shut them all the way off and then shut them back on again. The second thing to try is, as far as the power source is concerned, is to make sure, very simply, that your source did not accidentally get unplugged. So trace your power cord wire from the particular component to whatever it's plugged into. If it's a line conditioner, a surge protector, or something else like that, make sure that is plugged in. If your surge protector or line conditioner seems like it might be dead, or maybe you had a recent power surge or something else like that, go ahead and unplug that, maybe run an extension cord to a nearby outlet in another room to make sure you're on a different circuit, and try it there. The last thing to do is to make sure the system itself hasn't failed. If all those things check out, go to the front of the component and manually push the power button and see what happens. If that device does not turn on by manually pushing the power button, then it could be the power supply inside the particular device has failed. And if that's the case, you do need a service call, but not from a smart home company. You actually need a service call from your service provider. So whether that be DirecTV, or I guess AT&T now, Frontier, or one of those. Hard to keep track, they keep changing so much. So that's number two. Number three is to make sure your device is connected to the internet. Now, this is particularly true, or particularly important rather, for devices like Roku's and Apple TVs that are often IP controlled. What that means, very simply, is that they're controlled over the internet. So the control system is sending commands over the internet. So if this device loses connection with the internet, it's going to stop working all of a sudden. So you want to make sure that's connected by going into the, you're going to have to grab the remote that came with the device, so either the Roku remote or the Apple TV remote, just to name two examples. Point it at the gear, go underneath the network settings, make sure you see an IP address, and if there is a place to test for a network connection, make sure you do that test and make sure it passes. The fourth thing that we're going to try, especially for our universal remotes that have rechargeable batteries, is to check and see how long you've had your remote. Lithium-ion batteries, or which are in all of these things, depending upon how many times you charge them, can last anywhere between 6 months on the short end, all the way to about 2 years on the long end. So if it's been a while since you replace those rechargeable batteries, that could be an easy fix. On a lot of these universal remotes, these batteries are specific to the device. You can't really buy third-party parts for it, so you'd have to call the smart home company that sold you the remote or another authorized dealer, but it could be that they could just ship you the battery rather than requiring a service call if that's all that's wrong. If your particular remote has disposable batteries, then really check and make sure that you replace those, and make sure you replace them with fresh batteries. It's a quick 2-minute fix. You wouldn't believe how many service calls we get where that ends up all that's wrong with the system is they just hadn't replaced the batteries for a while. And then number 5, this is a central processor or base station problem. Let's say that you're controlling your remote, you have all your gear tucked behind closed doors, and all of a sudden it stops working, but you find on further troubleshooting that when you point your remote at the devices, they do work. Well, that's going to be most typically a base station or central processor failure. Could be because again, back to our power source, it either got unplugged or the power source inside it or power supply inside it has failed. Another less likely but equally frustrating cause is that some new device has entered that space that is causing a lot of electrical interference and disabling the remote to talk to the base station with wireless communication. What would you ask would cause electrical interference? DVRs are big culprits, amplifiers are big culprits, air conditioning compressors, any large motor that's within the area can emit a electromagnetic frequency that will interfere with this RF device. If that's the particular issue, unfortunately you'll probably need to give us a service call because that's tricky to resolve. But if the other ones are just a simple power supply issue, that would be pretty easy to resolve as well. And finally, with your phone, if you're using phone for control, 2 things you want to check. One is to make sure that your Wi-Fi is on. A lot of times when people are out and about, they turn their Wi-Fi off for a myriad of reasons. Maybe it makes the phone work better. Maybe they can't be on their work Wi-Fi, something else like that. Make sure you turn the Wi-Fi back on your phone when you get in your particular location where your smart home system is. And then also make sure you're on the correct network, especially for those of you who have 5G networks separate from their 2.4G networks. Make sure you are on the network, the same network that your smart home system is on, so that you can control it. And then finally, with saving this one for last, this works in probably 7 out of 10 times, is simply to reboot your device. Now with a computer, that's a shutdown or a restart, but for something like a Roku or an Apple TV, they don't quite have that shutdown sequence. So in that particular case, we just pull the power cord. We typically want to wait about 30 seconds or so for the system to completely power down, all the lights in the front to shut off, and then we plug that baby right in. Like I said, about 7 out of 10 times, this will resolve your issue as well. So before you start messing around with your components, you want to make sure to check your warranty with your smart home company, because some smart home companies will void parts of the warranty if you just start pulling out gear, changing wires, and stuff like that. So check that, make sure you're all good there. If you are, try these steps. If you get through all these and they all check out and your system still isn't working, well, it's probably time for a service call. If you're in the LA area, you can give us a call and we can come out and service your system. If you're not in the LA area and you feel like you want to talk to us anyway, give us a call on the phone or send us an email. You can reach us at 855-832-4775 or info@technospeakco.com, and we can help you out there. Once again, this is Steve from TechnoSpeak. I'd like to thank you for your time, and we'll see you in the next video.